Hello everyone, my name is Richard Allen and this video is the final presentation as well as a peer review for my Mass Media and Society class. Also, somewhere there's going to be a link for the PowerPoint presentation I made for the final presentation. I'm not going to lie to you, it's pretty cut and dry. There's no funny pictures or exciting videos or anything like that, and I'm going to cover all the information in this video. So I have it there because it's a requirement. So let's get into it. The topic I'm discussing is podcasts, what they are, how they came to be, and why I enjoy them. Podcasts, for those of you who don't know, is a digital medium in the realm of mass media. And what that means is, just like Netflix puts movies out there for a lot of people and YouTube puts clips out there, podcasts are another way of putting audio, video, and PDF files out to the masses, another way to attain entertainment and knowledge. They are recorded and put out there in an episodic fashion, so they've come to be known as shows. Some of them aren't shows. Some of them are very educational. They're a way to learn another language, a way to learn how to meditate, things like that. But a lot of them are just shows. They're just people talking about whatever it is those people talk about. There's plenty of them discussing current events. There's plenty of them talking about people's day-to-day lives, things like that. The best way I could describe them in one phrase is they are what radio evolved into. Getting into the history of them, years and years ago, whole families would sit around and listen to the radio. They would listen to the news, they would listen to sports scores, they would listen to whatever their Lone Ranger was up to that week. Well, podcasts kind of go across the same way. They're put out in a weekly fashion, episodes if you will, and people listen to whatever the show entails. The ones I like to listen to are the Smodcast ones with Kevin Smith, Scott Mosier, Jason Mewes, all those guys. And they usually talking about movies they've done, things that are going on in the world, Jason Mewes' problems with drug addiction, things like that. But like I said, this particular part right now, I'm talking about the history of how they came to be. And I was very surprised to learn during my research that podcasts have their history and their roots starting in the 1980s with RCS, Radio Computing Services. And what these did was they had digital formats for music and audio files and whatnot, and they could send those out to different radio stations to put out there. So instead of having everything recorded in on-site, on location, they were able to actually compress them into some kind of file, I'm assuming, and send those out to the masses. And that's where podcasts got their start. In 1993, a guy named Carl Malamud, I believe I'm saying that right, started Replay Radio, which was a way of, it was more like TiVo for radio stations. If you weren't able to catch a radio station, or a radio show, excuse me, at a point in time, they were able to replay it, basically, kind of record it and listen to it at a later time. And the thing that really brought podcasts to the mainstream and really got the ball rolling, gathered steam, what have you, was MP3 files. Suddenly there was a way to actually store and download and store all these compressed files. I don't really know how that stuff works. I'm not very tech savvy. But I think the first device, this MP3 device, was called the i2Go. And it was the precursor basically to the iPod, which is where podcast gets its name from, the iPod. I'm sure a lot of people knew that, or assumed it anyway. And just as portable MP3 devices, iPod, iPhone, Zune, Android, what have you, became more and more common, podcasts, just like that, kept going with them. It was in the research, since podcasts as a whole is a very, I wouldn't say organized. It's pretty organized, but it's still in its early stages. Oddly enough, since it started in the 80s, really. It was really hard to kind of find some set numbers about podcasts as a whole. Like, it was really hard to find how many podcasts are downloaded, every so often. It was hard to find out how much money these things make. It was hard to, find stuff out like that. But I did find some information. It's in the PowerPoint, but I'm going to tell you what it is right now. In 2013, just last year, roughly 31 million people downloaded at least one podcast every month, which adds up to a lot. Chris Hardwick's podcast. I believe it's called The Nerdiest, um, which generated his whole celebrity status from that podcast. He went on to do several shows and several comedy things. Most notably at midnight on Comedy Central on AMC's Talking Dead, which is a huge, huge show. His whole podcast setup cost him roughly 103, 107 bucks. I can't remember the exact figure, and I think it now generates $170,000 a year. So, dude's making a pretty penny. I'm not saying every podcast makes that kind of money, but uh, but some of the research suggested that it wasn't hard to make money off podcasts. Um, Basically, all you need is where the money comes from is a sponsor. If you listen to podcasts, which I do, you know that at the start of the show or at the end of the show, and sometimes even in the middle of the show, they'll cut to a word from their sponsors or even the I don't want to call them actors, even the podcast personalities themselves will plug a product, and basically, just this product needs notice, or not product. This company needs to notice that you're getting some subscriptions down. You're getting some subscribers, much like YouTube, where you get enough people to subscribe to your show. A sponsor's going to come in and give you money to plug their stuff on your show. And Chris Hardwick said, it's not like you need 30 million people to listen to your podcast to make money. He said, 10,000 of people is an easy number to get to, and you get 10,000 people. A company can see that as 10,000 new customers, buying their product, especially if it's a food type company or Amazon or whatever, McDonald's. 10,000 people don't come in and get one thing and never come back. They keep coming back. So you get a couple people, not even that many, just a couple people, and you can start making money off podcasts. And the best thing about podcasts right now, anyway, is it's 100% free. Anybody with a computer and a microphone can make a show. To subscribe and listen to as many podcasts as you want is 100% free. You download the app on your mobile device or your computer, and all podcasts ever are available to subscribe to. And once you subscribe to them, all the episodes they've ever made is available to you. And that's one of the big reasons I like them, is the variety and the convenience. It's not like TV or radio shows where you have to be in the right place at the right time to catch it. As soon as it goes on and it's available to the public, it's available whenever you want it. If you're out and about doing whatever it is you do, and you get a little notification in your phone that this podcast is this new episode is available, you can listen to it later. You can listen to it right then and there. You can listen to it later. You can listen to it 3 months down the road if you want to. And it's just convenient. Like I said, the variety. There's so many different ones. The other night, I was looking for ones to help me learn a second language. There was ones to help you learn how to meditate. There's all kinds of ones out there. Like I said, the ones I like to listen to the most are the Smodco ones with Kevin Smith and all those guys. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, and before I got into podcasts, I would go on YouTube and I'll just type in Kevin Smith, because the dude he's a kind of a chatty Cathy, and he puts a lot of stuff out there, and I dig his stuff. Where podcasts are at today, I'm basically the only person I know of in my core group of family and friends that listen to them regularly. But 31 million people a month can't be wrong, and I would hope in the near future, that it would become a big thing, that more people could get out there and put their opinions or 2 cents or any kind of knowledge that they have out there for the rest of humanity to listen or enjoy or what have you. And it is entertainment, and it's it's a way to put your opinions out there, but it does help people. Not to get too personal, but I'm an alcoholic. 1 second. That's my AA 24-hour coin. I've been clean and sober for a year and 9 days, I believe. I don't really count days. And I would attribute 50% of that progress due to the Jay and Silent Bob Get Old podcast, where once a week, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes have an intervention podcast, and that's what helped me out a lot, get through and deal with the alcoholism. Everybody's got a problem. Mine happens to be alcohol. Not saying that it'll help everybody. It helped me, and it's entertaining, and I enjoy it. But there's things out there for everybody. And I would like anyone who watches this video, or anybody who would like to, look into podcasts, or maybe even make your own. Like I said, it's 100% free. Get your stuff out there. And that's my presentation on podcasting. The next part of this video is the peer review for a fellow student in my class by the name of Corey Burke. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Corey Burke did a very, very good video presentation on women in video games, or women gender roles in video games. And it was an awesome video. As an avid video gamer myself, I agreed 100% with everything she said, especially in the beginning. And the cool thing I thought about her video was, for me, as she was saying stuff, I knew I had to do the peer review for it, so I was kind of coming up with things to think about, critique or whatever. And so I was thinking of things, and then she would mention that thing. The specific one that I'm going to get into is Mass Effect. If you play that game, you know it's awesome. If you've never played that game, check it out. It is a wonderful series of games that I believe they're re-releasing for the next-gen PlayStation 4, Xbox One consoles. But before anyone thinks, oh, he's just going to agree and things and speak highly of that video, you're wrong, because I do have some critiques. The subject, once again, was women gender roles in video games. I think, while I think that video was great, and I think she did a great job on the video, I think that particular subject, I think it's a moot point. I think that is a subject that there's no way to win or lose that subject. I think it's kind of a cop-out, really. No offense to her, I thought she did a great video, as I'm going to say to cover my tracks as a disclaimer throughout this. But it's very easy, in my opinion, to say women were objectified or not portrayed correctly in video games. I'm not saying talking about podcasts wasn't easy. That was one of the reasons I chose that subject, because it's easy. But of course, you know, especially in early video games, women were portrayed as damsels in distress, and they weren't marketed right. In the early days, video games, much like comic books, much like action movies, much like everything else, they cater to the audience. You always got to speak to the majority of the room. And it was understood that more boys, men if you will, bought and played video games. So it was tailored to them. As time went on and more women and girls and what have you started playing video games, they got to tweak the system a little bit. And not the very first, but one of the things she brought up first was, of course, Princess Peach in the Mario series. She's the damsel in distress. She's a non-playable character, and the object of that series of games really is to rescue the princess. And it's a tale old as time. It was, you know, the hero has to rescue the maiden fair from the evil villain. And these days, I guess that's an issue of the woman needing to be rescued. But that's something that's been through history. And I'm no history major or anything like that. But almost every fairy tale or historical literature, it followed that path of girl gets taken, dude's true love gets taken, what have you, and he's got to go through all these trials and tribulations to rescue her. And I don't see anything wrong with that at all. To take one aspect of fantasy and put it into another aspect of fantasy. I think it's boring. I think at the time, don't get me wrong, I thought the Mario Brothers games were great. I think that ploy has been done to death. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, other than it's been done to death. Who cares anymore? But the thing nobody ever brings up about that part is, everyone's like, oh, the woman's a damsel in distress, woman can't save herself. That's some kind of chauvinist thing. Maybe Mario didn't want to be put in that position. Mario was put in that position at least 3 or 4 times where he's got to save this girl. I'm sure he was upset with that too. Just like Beowulf, King Arthur, whoever the hell else had to save some girl from a kidnapping. Moving on. At another point in the game, she brought up Lara Croft. Lara Croft, the protagonist, I believe it's called. Protagonist of the series Tomb Raider. If anybody remembers the original series, she had the blue top, the Steve Irwin shorts, and she had pistols, and she braided tombs, I assume. I didn't really get into the games that much. But she did bring up that her womanly figure was a mistake. Originally, she was supposed to be a little bit more normal chested, flat chested, whatever it was. And it was a mistake that the developers just ran with, where she was, I guess, well, female-y, well endowed, or whatever. To that I say, at the time, if you go back and look how Laura Croft looked in those days versus how she looks these days, it was very blocky. Graphics weren't what they are today, where they basically look real. They had a of course, they had to make an attractive woman for it. And one of the things that were, especially at the time, that was considered attractive was big breasts. And also, they had to really emphasize that this was a woman being the protagonist for this game. And got it, she's wearing the booty shorts. I got it, her name's Laura. But on the surface, you know, I guess when you're just walking by, they had to make sure that when you look at this character, you see a female. So, on a mistake, or however, she had big boobs, and they just ran with that. And of course, it worked, because Lara Croft became a series of games. It became a series of movies, and the new one they just put out, the Tomb Raider ones, were amazing. If you haven't checked those out and you like games, check those out. Very much the female version. Nah, I can't even say the female version. Just kind of like Uncharted, Drake's Fortune, all that. Very good games. I will say this for her video. What she said about Mass Effect was 100% accurate. Mass Effect, if you haven't checked that out or know anything about that, phenomenal series of games. And in that game, when you start, you have an option of creating a character for this story. And you can choose male or female. And throughout the game, it's I would consider it a role-playing game, but it's not a traditional role-playing game like Final Fantasy or whatever. It's got aspects of first-person shooter, action-adventure, but I would consider it a role-playing game. You can find love interests in this game, and you don't have to be a heterosexual in this game. You can totally be gay in this game, or lesbian, or whatever the term would be. And that was a really, really cool aspect of that game, because when I play video games, I like to play the character. And the reason I didn't get too far in that games is because I have to play the character. When I first started the game, I was a dude, obviously. Boom, I'm a guy. But I created a dude character that was straight. And I gotta tell you, that made the game incredibly boring. Who hasn't seen that played out to death? And of course in the game, it's all new, and the story mode's awesome, and the graphics are great, and the controls are there, and everything about that game is awesome. But when I tried to play it as a dude, as a heterosexual dude, it didn't make sense to me. It just didn't seem right. It was just I don't know how to explain it other than it didn't flow right with me. In order for me to play the game, I have to be the female. I believe her name's Jane. I don't remember, because it's voice acted and stuff, so you don't get to really pick your character's name. But in order for me to play that game and really enjoy it, I have to play the female character. Which I will add this to her point that I don't think she brought up, because Corey Burke is in fact a female, and she might not know about this. So this is kicking some knowledge from one gamer to another. If you're a dude and you're playing a game where you had the option to pick a male or a female, you're almost expected to pick male. My brother, another huge gamer, there was this game out for a long time. Or not for a long time. There's this game out called Star Wars Galaxy. It was a mass multiplayer online game. And great game. They ruined it, but in the beginning it was a great game. And one of the characters he created for that was of a female. Just to have another character and play the game a different way and really play the character and see how that progresses. I'm not gonna lie, myself and my family gave him a lot of shit for playing as a female, and it wasn't until years later that I figured out, I was like, play the character. So that's just a tidbit of information from one gamer to another, that everyone gets gender stereotyped from time to time. That's just the way the world is. White dudes like myself aren't immune to it like everyone would like to believe. There's plenty of stuff out there that we get stereotyped for, especially if you're a white dude who's a gamer. Probably if you're a black dude who's a gamer too. Now that I don't know anything about that. I'm not a black dude. But you're never going to escape gender stereotypes, racial stereotypes, and the best thing you can do, I guess, is just overcome it, get through it. I don't really know what to tell you, other than thought the video was great. I hope you all enjoyed this whole thing. To anyone who's in the class and is listening to this, I want you all to know I thoroughly enjoyed the class. I know it was an online class and we didn't get any real FaceTime with each other, but everything that was posted in the discussion boards and whatever I could, I read, and you all seem like phenomenal people with very insights and hope we have a class in real time together someday. You all seem very nice and awesome people, and that's my video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Um, Corey, if you're peer reviewing mine as well, let me know what you think about all this. Y'all take it easy.